Good evening, my dear friends and colleagues. It's indeed a pleasure and a matter of pride for all of us to be back with you all for this second episode of the second season of Genius Junction. So this is a quiz which we conduct on behalf of Indian Fertility Society, and today we are going to do it in association with the special interest groups on embryology and quality assessment and quality control in ART labs. So the flow of the program would be: firstly, I would request Dr. Nidhi to be taking her talk on QAQC in the ART lab, and this would be followed by a very practical talk on embryology by our very own Dr. Sarabpreet. And then Dr. Parul will be coming to you guys with a very interesting quiz on the two topics on Kahoot. I'm sure all of you have downloaded Kahoot on your mobile apps, and we'll come back to the rules once the quiz starts. So, over to you, Dr. Nidhi.
Good evening, ma'am. Can I share my screen?
Yeah. One more word. Dr. Nidhi is ASHRAE certified embryologist, and she's working in association with Apollo Hospitals, Varanasi. So we would love to hear her experiences today.
Is the screen visible?
Yeah. Can you make it full screen? Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, it's so a very good evening to all, and I thank Dr. Manjusha ma'am and Dr. Ved Prakash sir and all the SIG group people from IFES for giving me this opportunity. And I hope I justify this quality control and quality assurance has been the key system which is, I think, so regulating the whole IVF center. You'll think that it's a part of the whole culture system, but it is a very, very important part which I've been given an opportunity to share and discuss with you all. So, and I was very lucky today that the quality control was going on in my own department today. And so I would be more interactive and try to make it concise. So if we talk about the total quality management system, so what is the main aim for that? It aims to maintain high standards so that we ensure a compliance that the outcome is there to achieve consistent result. So what do we exactly mean by these things is that at the end of the day, what we want is improvement of our patient outcomes and ensuring safety and effectiveness of the lab procedures. So both these are the two aims which we are aiming to. Now, as we see that the whole culture system, if you talk about in the IVF lab, there are so many aspects, but if you take into note, quality control and quality assurance is also a part of it, a very, very significant part of it. Now, if you see, as we studied earlier about sets and subset, this total quality management is a full term which ensures covers everything. So what comes under total quality management? The quality assurance, and a subset of quality assurance is quality control. And there's something more, which is how to maintain this quality control, how to regulate it, and how to do risk management at the end of it. So if I take very simple, this is a very simple picture given comparing the quality assurance and quality control. We all know variable definition about quality assurance control. If I take it into consideration, I'll start with quality assurance. It is process oriented. It prevents defect. It is a proactive approach. It is a managerial tool, and it is everyone's responsibility. Whereas quality control in an IVF, if we talk about, it is product oriented. That is our outcome. That is the embryo and the pregnancy outcome. Then it deflects identification. Then it is a reactive approach. It is not a proactive. It's a reactive. We will take measures in this, and it is a corrective tool. And finally, it is specific team's responsibility. As of today, I'll be discussing about the TQM and the including quality assurance, quality control, mainly regarding the IVF lab. So what comes more? The third term which we'll see in this aspect is quality improvement. It is an ongoing process of identifying and implementing opportunities for enhancing lab processes, efficiency, and their outcomes. So these are the three aspects we'll be seeing. So in nutshell, what key points today we'll be discussing in this is there is quality. Quality talks about the gametes, the technique, and the embryos at the end of the day. Quality assurance, it mainly controls everything, that is the recording of all the quality checkpoints. There should be proper documentation and assessment, comparing the same with the previous month. And finally, documenting implantation and pregnancy rates at our center. Then the subset, that is quality control. It takes all the checkpoint measurements, which is checking the gas, the temperature, the water level, checking the media and the pH, checking the gamete quality, that is morphological analysis, which we do on daily basis, checking proper sterilization, that is very important. Now, how do we improve all the above? By improving the culture techniques, by improving the Gould-Talty embryo blast conversions, and improving implantation. And I would add one more point to improving the embryologist itself. Now, if you see the quality cycle, it is also known as Deming cycle. It is the simplest and commonly used quality implementation methodology to encompasses continuous quality improvement throughout. It enables both management of the quality as well as the execution. So what do? We plan, that is, we do the SOPs, identify the opportunities and changes. We do implement these so that the impact is there. We check on them whether these things which are implanted, are they making any impact, and the analysis, and then we take action. If there is positive implementation, we will go further and continue the SOPs and continue our methodology. But if there is a negative impact and we are finding something, then we again stop there, go back, trace our step, and again start from the beginning. That is, we again plan. Now, there are multiple guidelines. ESHRE itself had given a guidelines in which the requirements cover the organization, management and personal equipment, materials, facility and documentation, record keeping, quality review. These all have been covered in the revised guidelines of good practices by laboratory. I'm not going into the detail. The key point I want to do is these practices ensure they provide standard SOPs and they ensure traceability of these gametes. Also, there are also multiple things in with respect to this is that there is confirmation should be there. You should improve proper and periodic methodic equipment maintenance is there. Verifying these specifications, which we are doing right now. Taking corrective methods or actions to keep these performance procedures under conformity. Reviewing the performance of these ensure continuously. In short, reviewing means the TQM is done so that whether these are followed through, and finally providing risk management if required. So how do we actually achieve it? So today, very nicely, the person who came for the quality control, he explained to me, it's a very simple process. That one which I am doing, that is the internal quality control. And for secondly, which a second party or the third party comes from outside, that is the external quality control, which is mainly by the companies who are coming for our having an annual maintenance, AMCs are there. And then they come and what do? So what we do is on a daily basis, that is in our lab, we have to maintain the temperature. We check the CO2 levels, we check the VOCs, and we do the swab tests. These swab tests in our center, we are doing it monthly. We can even do it quarterly or half yearly, but I prefer to do it monthly if the lab is having a lot of cases. Now, what is external QC, quality control? When the team is coming from outside, what do? They, first of all, either they are time coming quarterly or half yearly, depending on your lab and your requirement. The main aim what they do is they do the particulate count, they check the filter integrity, VOC counts are done, pH of the media is checked whether our incubators are able to maintain that pH, hygiene of a laboratory is being checked by them thoroughly, and finally the calibration of all the equipments which are actually running inside a lab. So this is the quality control, how we are doing it. Now this was the bag, and was lucky to take the picture of them. They have all the devices which they have been using for the quality check. They come together today. So if I take it into a little bit more of elaboration, what are the different parameters which we do during the quality check? First is the laboratory setup itself, whether what the facility is there, where the setup is there, what is the air quality. So as we all know that the most important is the temperature, the humidity, materials used, which should be free from VOCs. Facilities should be separate from washing area, specifically the place where the chemicals are kept or the clothes are kept should be segregated. Also, the HEPA filters are intact for providing clean room and adequate air quality. So these are the two instruments they had used. This is the particulate count. If I can expand the screen, and is it visible? I hope. So here they were seeing the VOC count was seen. They were simultaneously seeing the temperature and also the chemical, whether the VOCs are present or not. So it was 0 in our lab. So coming to the next one, personal. Talking about the embryologist, whether the number of laboratory staff is equivalent to the number of cycles performed, whether the staff is sufficiently qualified. We should very, very much take into consideration a staff who is coming, who has been recruited. You should not take it as a standard that he knows the process. He should first of all be trained, be observed by the senior embryologist, has to understand all the SOPs, has to learn all the SOPs, and they have to implement all the SOPs, which have been already running in the lab. That is including the regular training and education of the person. Also, a healthy work environment is very much important. Also, and lastly, the backup for a laboratory staff. If the laboratory staff has any personal reason, is not able to come, the embryologist is not able to come to your center, do you have somebody to coming to you? Because again, embryologist changes, the staff changes, your control changes. Now coming to the last, that is processes. Now, next steps, sorry. That is processes, performing all the processes based on SOP. So SOPs are being in every center, but are they being implemented is a very, very important point taken consideration by the lab director or the lab manager. They should ensure that the embryologist perform these procedures based on the SOPs given. And also, if it's a center which has multiple centers, these SOPs and their performance indicators should be compared periodically. Coming to the equipment. Now, the laboratory should contain all essential items required for IVF in a proper number according to the workload there. The equipment should be calibrated, should be in working condition, periodical maintenance should be done. The downtime should be recorded and notified to the personnel working in the laboratory, and time appropriate replacement is a very, very must thing. Consumables and disposables, if we take into these consideration, consumable, disposable, I'm not going into company, I'm not going into any private person, what should be, we all know it, we should always use proper consumables. There should be MEA or LAL start testified for toxicity. They should be delivered in a proper closed condition. They should not be you can say they should be not, the packet should not be open. They can already be carrying certain infections and bacteria. Also, when they are being used, we have to open them in the incubator, the laminar, so that the proper VOC has been, a gas exchange has been taken place. They should be stored in a proper place. It should not be just stuffed inside a storage or inside an almirah. They should be kept properly stacked. Accountability of those disposables should be there. And the last and the most important, the date of manufacturing and expiry should always be checked before use. Now coming to the culture system, if we see, again, the key points which was outside, now going inside the culture system, again, the temperature, that is 37 degrees should be maintained. So today, the RK system was being examined, and this is the digital meter in which the temperature has been tested. Now, 2 points I want to point it out. One is the temperature testing of the incubator itself, where the meter has been, the probe, thermocouple has been attached to the surface of the incubator. Secondly, the media has to be tested. The media which has been incubated has to be tested whether the temperature is maintained in the media also. Similarly, when we are doing the testing of temperature on the stage, we do not test the temperature of the stage. We take a dish, we keep the media in the dish, leave it for 20 to 30 minutes, and then we check the temperature of the media. It is a media which should have a temperature of 37 degree, not the stage. Next point, that is a CO2 and O2 levels. They have to be checked on daily basis. That is done by the internal quality control. pH. Now, pH is mandatory to check. This is especially very important. I know many pH meter is a costly device. It is not available at multiple centers. So at least we should have a proper external audit team which is coming quarterly to check the pH. If you talk about ideally, The culture media, whenever the batches change, whenever the new batch is coming in, we should always check the culture media pH, whether it is being equilibrated properly with the present CO2 level in the incubator. Because slight change in pH will lead to lot of detrimental effect to the growth of the embryo. Also, adequate number of incubators is also recorded. If there are multiple cases taking place, number of gate opening should be limited. That is limited opening of the door. If the continuous opening of the door is there for keeping the media, what happens is the incubator, it is just acting like a gimmick box, because you are not able to equilibrate it back to the level of the CO2, which can maintain that pH. So ultimately the pH is dropping. Also, one of the important point is use oil overlay. So if you are having an incubator and if you use an oil overlay, it benefits in a way that the evaporation is not very fast, the osmolarity does not change very fast, the temperature is lost comparatively lesser, and the pH change is comparatively slower as compared to when the embryo culture is not overlaid by oil. And finally, the alarms. Alarm should always be there. Now, these are the various pH meters which are being used. Some are, once is a benchtop pH meter, there's blood gas analyzers, and also the real-time pH meter. Now, the next important point, at your out center, you should have a checklist. A checklist is mandatory, which is to be done at the start and the end of the day. Check for every variable optimal. So one day happens, there are few cases you are doing, and suddenly what happens, you see certain cases that there was change in the blastulation rate, and there was certain change. So if you go back on your documentation, you will see that there was slight change in the temperature, there can be slight change in the CO2 level. So this is very important that everyday documentation of the initial variables are done. Next, sample identity and traceability. Now, this is something which is very, very key important to the, first of all samples, all procedures should be double checked. They should be witnessing. I'll only take one point, which is the witnessing of the sample and identification is very important, and labeling. Now, labeling can be done, it is by manual also. And nowadays we have the AI system in which we have tag labels, we can use them, and then all the identification codes are unique to the patient, and it is providing so much better outcome. And lastly, emergency plans. If something happens, what do we do? As I've said about the quality cycle earlier, emergency plan is also very important. So what is important is, in emergency planning, we aim to describe the actions to be taken in order of importance, like safety of the person and the patient is most important, then protection of all the fresh and cryopreserved human material, and then limitation of damage to the equipment and medical record. So emergencies are not predicted. Anything can happen. A fire can happen, an earthquake can happen. So these are the things which should already be kept in mind. So what can we do and how can we do it? Now, these are, now next coming to, we have talked about the procedures which we do. Now, how do we reciprocate it? So for this, the Vienna consensus and Maribor consensus has given us beautiful laboratory performance indicators. So in which on tabulation, if we see, we can predict what happened, what is going to happen, on what can be prevented. I'll just take into few of the performance indicators, that these are known as the KPIs. Now, in key performance indicators, KPIs, two values are important. One is the competence value and one is the benchmark value. So benchmark is what we want to achieve. So I'll only discuss, see, all these rates are very important. We all know about it, but just few of the key indicators which are to be done on a very regular basis and mandatory for every laboratory, so that the outcomes can be predicted, is an exit damage rate. It brings the efficiency of the embryologist himself. Then the fertilization failure rate. This is very important. Whether the gametes are the cause, or the embryologist is the cause, or the laboratory is the cause. Again, that cycle has to be gone back to see where we went wrong. Then the cleavage rate. Fertilization has taken place. The cleavage rate is the next important part. The blastocyst development rate. If the blastocyst development rate is more than 60%, the laboratory is on their benchmark. And finally is the implantation rate. Whether it is a cleavage or a blastocyst, both are playing a key important role. And coming to the Maribor consensus, what are the performance indicators we have seen? Three performance indicators I want to bring forward. That is the cycle cancellation rate, the rate of cycle with severe OHSS, and M2 proportion of M2 oocytes during ICSI. So these, again, if you see these indicators, what we can trace back is whether if there is certain dip in these. So first of all, the management has to be alerted why the cycle cancellation rate is there. If there is OHSs, whether the follow-up of the patient was done in a proper way, investigations were done in the proper way, again they have to set back there. And M2 oocyte rate, it directly reflects on the injections given to the patient and the patient profile. Both things are taking into consideration. So if there is certain difference in the M2 receiving rate, you can see a dip in the proportion of M2 receive. You have to go back and see whether the quality control of your the injections are there or not, whether they are properly kept in the ice or not, whether they have been there is some problem during the during the installation of the injections to the patient. So all these points have to be taken into consideration. Again, three more points which have been given by Maribor is complication rate during OPU, clinical pregnancy outcome, and multiple pregnancy rate, also taken into consideration, so that the further the cycles can be modified. What are the future trends of quality control if we talk about in IVF? That is the role of automation and AI, which enhances QMS. AI-driven analytical for predictive maintenance of equipment and real-time monitoring of lab condition is the trending thing right now. Every center is trying to inculcate AI-based prediction, but is it actually bringing outcome is a big debate currently we are facing. Also, the predictive analytic for improving IVF outcome, we are using data-driven models which predict the patient outcome and tailor treatment plans, which is already evidence-based. Evidence-based studies are also showing that there is potential in the predictive analytic studies which are going on, which is ultimately improving the IVF cycles. So what is my take-home message? I would say total quality management is a necessity right now. Every center has SOPs. It's a must, and it is a must to inculcate it and make sure that they are being followed by all. Quality control and quality assurance is not a one-day thing. It is a continuous process and has to be done on regular basis. KPIs are a guide. These key performance indicators, they will show us something going on the lab which is not visible to the naked eye. We may be thinking our cycles are going good, oh, we are getting very good results. But if you see the blastulation rate, there is a fall, go back and check, something must be amiss, which is hidden, whether it's a temperature, whether it's a pH in the lab. Many things can be traced out using these KPIs. And finally, the best practice gives us the best results. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nidhi, for such a comprehensive talk. I mean, you made such a complicated chapter so easy for us. And definitely, I quite agree with you that in order to maintain proper results, a proper consistency, and very proper work is needed. It's high time that we follow the protocols for not only for achieving good results, but also for being safe in all fronts. Thank you so much.
Thank you
There's
so much.
one question I can see in the chat box from Ashutosh Bahulekar, and he is asking the cost of a VOC meter. Can you please tell us what it is?
Ma'am, it ranges from 1.5 to 3 lakhs, and good ones come more than 3.5 lakh around. This is what I figured out in the conference when I went to talk about the VOC meters. And
Okay.
more important is their specificity and sensitivity, which is to be taken into consideration. Secondly,
Yeah.
I would talk about all these equipments. Calibration is very much important. Whether these are, like, for example, in our center only, the VOC meter, the pH meter, we have a digital thermometer also. All we have sent for calibration, we send them quarterly, ma'am, to the respective companies, and they are always calibrated. So this is also very important point. And one point for pH meter, which I was told today, they had a digital pH meter which could be visualized on phone. I had a video, but I was not able to somehow inculcate in my lecture. So the process, all the steps were there. So one thing is important, the pH meter which they were using, they said they had already for calibration, the company provides them with different type of chemical, one chemical was having concentration of 4.0 and other had 7, and then they calibrated the pH meter on the spot. And every time you do a testing of a media, the pH meter has to be calibrated from 0. So this is one important point I came to know today, ma'am.
Very, very enlightening indeed. Yes. Thank you so much, Nidhi. It was wonderful hearing from you.
Thank you so much,
Uh,
ma'am. Sorry for overshooting the time a little bit, ma'am.
Absolutely no problems. Thank you. And may I now request Dr. Sarapreet? All of us know him so well. He is such a great teacher, such a wonderful person, and a great orator, and a good clinician. Let us hear it from you, Dr. Sarapreet, without any further ado.
Yeah, good evening to all. Thank you, ma'am, for your kind words. I'm sharing my screen now with your permission. Is my screen visible to all?
Yes, we can see.
And you can hear me clearly now because I'm actually not in my house. I'm on a highway, so it's raining also.
Wow. No, but we can hear you and see your screen well, although your face is in a bit of darkness, and it explains that you are on a highway. So thanks to your dedication to the event, that you have actually drawn your car on a side and still talking to us. Thank you so much. Let's hear it from you.
Pleasure, ma'am. Pleasure. So we will be talking about the ET catheters and the loading techniques. So I'm sure the embryo transfer catheters are being used by everybody, and everybody is aware of the different loading techniques and different kind of nuances which we face on a daily basis with the ET catheters. So if we go back in the history, just one second. So if we go back in the history, the first successful embryo transfer in humans was done obviously when Louis Brown was born in 1978. And now there are various kind of catheters which are available. We used to get Levotech, but now Levotech is not being available. It was one of the most trusted and nice catheters, I would say. I am really a fan of Levotech. And then Cook is also offering a variety of catheters, and there go different, ecogenic, non-ecogenic, rigid, and so many different varieties are there. And Wallace is there now, which is being very commonly used. New entrants are Krishko and Ganetix, and so many other catheters have come of late. So any catheter is designed and it has an outer sheath and an inner sheath. Outer sheath is a thick hollow plastic tube with a bulb. You can see a bulb at the distal end. And then there's a stopper and markings are there. The bulb helps pass the blind endocervical crypts, which line the cervical canal and cause the tip of the catheter to get trapped. The inner sheath is a very soft tube, and there are markings at the distal end of the tube. See, these are the markings, and different catheters have different markings. Like Cook has got around 3 markings, so you can negotiate around 3 centimeters inside the uterine canal, endometrial cavity, whereas Levotech or Akita Zato or Organetics, these catheters have got around 4 markings. So you can negotiate around 4 centimeters inside the endometrial cavity. And the embryos are loaded into this tube and they are handed over. So again, we'll come to the different techniques of embryo transfer in a few slides from now. So if you look at the schematic diagram of an embryo transfer catheter, are of 2 types. Again, there's a outer is common to all with a silicone hub, and then there's an inner cannula with markings, which we have seen in the previous slide also. And there are 2 types of end hole catheters. It can be a French end hole transfer catheter, like this is the most commonly used one. And then there can be a side hole transfer catheter. And it is said that the side hole catheter helps in the deposition of the embryo in a better way. But again, it's a theoretical point. Most commonly used is a end hole catheter only. Right? I'm sure now all of you will go back and see the tips how they are designed, whether they're end hole or south or side hole. Then again, there are soft catheters and rigid catheters. Soft catheters are slightly curved outer sheet to fit the natural curve of the cervical canal, and there is a small bulb at the tip to facilitate the negotiating cervical crypts and the internal os. Various models of soft catheters are in the market, and routinely which we use are the Wallace, Cook, Friedman, and catheters which are specifically designed to be used in the outer first fashion, that is the preloading technique. Uh, Sorry, the afterloading technique, the outer sheath first fashion. And most common examples are Lebotec, Kitazato, Cook Sydney IVF, Guardia XS, again that's by Cook. So, why are the soft catheters better compared to rigid catheters? There is an increased chance of pregnancy which is achieved. The word soft means the combination of physical flexibility, malleability, and smoothness of the tip. So, it causes less damage to the endometrium, leads to improved clinical pregnancy rates, and the incidence and nature of uterine contractions may be reduced since it is soft. The rigid catheters are associated with bleeding, trauma, and stimulation of uterine contractions. And using soft catheters for embryo transfer results in a significantly higher pregnancy rate compared to firm catheters. But you cannot write off the firm catheters. In certain stenotic canals and other situations, we do end up using the rigid catheters also. And nowadays, I recently saw that there's a flexible metallic catheter also available in the market, which can be autoclaved and used like an outer sheath. And the inner sheath can be again a soft catheter, which can be used only once. Firm meaty catheters are made of the same material, but they have got firm inner catheters than compared to the soft models, and therefore they are known as the firm meaty catheters. Some physicians would like to use a firm, like I used to work with a clinician who would always use a firm catheter. S- but mostly in general, most of the physicians will reserve them for technically difficult transfers, that is, the presence of a convoluted or stenotic cervical canal. So examples are one available by Lebotire CCD, Rocket, M-Track by Ganetics. These are common examples of firm meaty catheters. So they can be either echogenic, which have got a metallic ring, around 2 mm metallic ring is integrated at the distal end, and this gives beautiful visibility on the ultrasound machine. So the integration of a metallic ring, it provides increased echogenicity towards the tip of the inner catheter, and you exactly know where the catheter is and where the embryo is being deposited. So these are very common with Cook is offering them, and other companies such as Kitazato and Rocket are also offering this kind of catheters. Recently, I came across this SureView catheter by Cooper Surgical. It's not by Cooper Surgical. It's actually by Wallace. Cooper is marketing it. So it's a beautiful catheter. The beauty is that the outer sheath as well as the inner sheath, they have impregnated small air bubbles in the caliber of the plastic. So these small air bubbles are beautifully visible on the are very echogenic and are beautifully visible on the ultrasound. So even for beginners, these catheters are very easy to use. Plus, they have a stillet also, which is being offered as part of the package. So the stillet helps in negotiating the stenotic and cervical canals quite well, and the enhanced visibility gives you an exact idea about where the catheter is heading and where exactly the distal tip of the catheter is. And it is advantage. It is offers some kind of advantage for physicians who are less experienced and in obese women with a retroverted uterus. So, what all disposable and consumables you require while doing the process of embryo transfer? You require a syringe. Previously, even now, some people do use these rubberless syringes. It has known that rubber is embryo toxic, so please don't use rubber. But most commonly, people are using BD syringes, which do have a rubber at the distal end of the plunger, and this actually gives you a much better control while you are pushing the embryos into the uterine cavity. Also, we have used these Hamilton Thorne syringes, which are glass capillaries. And see, if you see carefully, this is the whole column is 0.025 ml. The whole column from across the length of the tube syringe is 0.025 ml. So it offers such a precise control when you are actually pushing the embryos. And we did a huge study on this glass syringes versus plastic syringes, and we presented it in the international conference which was held in Greater Noida a few years back, and we found that there was no particular advantage of using a glass syringe. It does offer a beautiful control, a very precise deposition of the embryos at the right spot, but again the incidence of retention of embryos was much more compared to a BD syringe, and the pregnancy rates were also found to be more or less similar. They're not significantly better, so there is no point of using the a glass syringe, it's quite expensive and it has to be autoclaved after use. Then you require a centrifugal dish for placing the embryos and flushing the needle. And you have to have the same media as the embryos are in. Either you go for a single step media or you go for a G1, G2 or cleavage blastocyst media, whichever the day of the embryos is. If so, the ET procedure, the embryos have to be in the same media as the embryos are being cultured in. So if it is at a day up to day 3, you can either transfer in cleavage or G1 media, or you can, if you are transferring in day 5, day 6, then you can either you have to transfer in the blastocyst media, or if you're using a single step media, you can transfer across day 1 to day 2 to day 6. The media will remain the same. So I'm just going to touch upon the important points of from loading to withdrawal of the ET catheter. Number one and most important, which we always miss, is the timeout. Whether it's one patient or multiple patients, timeout is very important and has to be done by the nurse, as well as it has to be announced in the lab also, because before the embryologist loads the embryos. And the ET media, I told you that you need centrifugal dishes, one for the transfer and two for flushing. So these pre-warmed dishes are used with pre-equilibrated media. The right embryos have to be selected and transferred to the to the transfer dishes. So there are two techniques. Either you can preload, in which both the inner and outer cannula are placed together, and then the embryologist loads the inner cannula and hands the whole set of the whole combination of inner and outer to the clinician, and he or she inserts it in the uterine cavity and transfers. So this is more commonly done in cases of easy transfers. Well, if it's a case of as a matter of convenience, I have seen afterload technique being more commonly practiced. In this, the clinician puts the outer cannula, and when she reaches the os, she or he reaches the os, then she makes an announcement that, please load the inner cannula, and the embryologist loads the inner cannula, and again at that point of time, the inner cannula is inserted after the clinician is sure of the placement of the outer cannula. At that point of time, the embryos are being loaded and brought to the inner outer cannula, and the inner cannula is inserted into the outer cannula, and embryos are deposited. So each technique has its own advantages and disadvantages. In preload, the embryos are guarded by two sheaths, the inner sheath and the outer sheath, and a better environment is created for the embryos. So even if there is a gush of air, a HEPA filter, air coming in, so it's less affected, and the transfers are done in a better way. In cases of afterload technique, you are very sure that you're in the right place, and then the embryos are being loaded, so the exposure rate might be less. So each technique has its own positives and negatives. You have to weigh, and maybe you have to customize as per the patient. So afterload technique, you bring out the embryos when the outer is in place. It's as simple as that. And then there are various loading techniques available for the embryologist, and it depends on which loading technique he or she prefers. I'll come to it later. And after you do the transfer, a positive pressure has to be maintained on the plunger. And this is to ensure that the embryos do not come back in because of the negative pressure generated around the inner cannula. So after that, the catheter is withdrawn, and some people like to withdraw the inner cannula. Some people like to withdraw both the inner and outer together, and some people like to withdraw it slowly. Some people like to withdraw it immediately. So between immediate and slow, there is a delay of 30 seconds before withdrawal, and the negative pressure could draw the embryos into the cervix. It's a good practice to, after pushing the embryos, it's a good practice to rotate the inner cannula by 90 degrees or preferably by 180 degrees. This helps in, kind of, it helps in depositing the embryos, and the inner cannula is moved to a different point, so that the chances of embryos coming back into the catheter after because of negative pressure are reduced. In any case, you have to check for the retained embryos, and if you find that the embryos are retained in the catheter, you have to immediately retransfer the embryos. It's a protocol, so you have to do it. So, if you're doing a batch IVF and if there are multiple embryo transfers to be done, then again you have to work in a way that the multiple openings of the incubator are reduced. So batch IVF, I always say, is all about incubator management and nothing else. If you can manage your incubators well, if you've got 10 cases and just 2 incubators and you don't know how to manage the incubator, you will end up spoiling the show. So I'll just like to highlight this point that the inner and outer cannula are designed in a way that when you enter the inner cannula into the outer cannula, and at the point where the first marking is there, at that point the catheters are level. See, the catheters are level, both the tips are at the same time, at the same place. When you go 1 centimeter in, so the inner cannula comes 1 centimeter out of the outer cannula. When you go 2 centimeters in from the this side, the inner cannula comes out 2 centimeter from the other end, distal end. So if you know the exact length of endometrial cavity, you have measured it, and you know that your outer bulb, the bulb of the outer cannula is at the internal os. So practically you have calculated how much in you have to go before when you are transferring. So if the cavity is 3 centimeter and the bulb is at the os, so you exactly know that you have to go in 1.5 centimeters and then transfer the embryos. So loading the catheters, in the previous slide I told you that we'll come to it in detail. So there are a variety of ways in which you can load the embryos. You can either load it in a air-filled syringe, or a medium filled syringe, or a combination of air bubbles and media droplets. It is suggested that if the catheter tip is blocked, then an air-filled syringe and catheter will compress on injection and provide no tactile feedback. So it's a better idea uh, to fill the inner cannula with fluid, so that you have a when the if the tip is getting blocked, so you have a tactile feeling and you can reposition the inner catheter. Though literature has suggested that there is no significant difference in the results between the two methods, and each clinic is recommended to develop its own protocol. Now I will just touch upon few techniques of embryo loading. The most common technique which was taught to us was medium air, then medium with the embryo, and then again air. So this was known as the MAMA technique, in which media, air, and then air was taken. And then there is a technique in which they take the embryo at the distal end in the media. And then there is a technique in which they create a air bubble and then take the media with the embryo in the end. The technique which most commonly is being used by us, we'll come to it later. And so each of these three methods has got its own disadvantages and advantages, but no significant difference in the results. So this is how we load it. We load the embryos in a sandwich method. First of all, we'll flush the inner cannula with the media, and then we'll create an air bubble of approximately 1 centimeter, and then we'll take medium with embryos, approximately again 1 centimeter of column of media, and the embryo has to be positioned in the distal side, close to the tip of the catheter. It is always better because the deposition is much better if you place it close to the tip of the media. And then again you take another air bubble. So this is known as a sandwich technique, in which it is air, media, and air. But the most common technique which I have come across is the medium air and medium air. So that is the MAMA technique. But I am using the AMA technique since many years now, and I have been getting decent results. Again, the transfer volume is important. It is said that a large volume, suppose 60 microliter, could cause expulsion of the embryos into the cervix, and also cause adherence to the outside of the catheter. So these embryos might come out because of the extra media volume. And volume less than 10 microliter may again adversely impact the implantation rates. It is said that a continuous fluid column of 20 to 30 microliter of embryo transfer media is usually recommended for a good result. So when you load the catheter, what is the reason of making an air bubble in front and at the back of the media with the embryos? So usually the air bubble helps in protecting the embryo from cervical mucus entrapment. So if there is some degree of mucus or blood coming in, then the bubble at the top it's protective. It protects the embryo from coming in contact with the blood. It also prevents accidental spillage before entering the endometrial cavity. So the embryo is not directly exposed to the tip, and accidental spillage is prevented. Also, it decreases the chance of embryo getting retained in the catheter, because when you push, a bubble goes, then media with you can see on the ultrasound machine that you can see the air going, and then you characteristically see that there is decreased echogenicity, that is media with the embryo, it's being pushed, and after that again a air bubble goes. So you're very sure that the embryo has gone in. So some people say that the air can have a detrimental effect because of it might increase the chance of embryo entrapment. It might release reactive oxygen species, but it's such a small volume of air that I don't think it's releases ROS in that extent that it can damage the embryos or do any other negative impact on the endometrial cavity. Again, the embryo implantation is dependent on the embryo quality, endometrial receptivity, and the transfer efficiency. Transfer efficiency is the technique of embryo transfer, which might differ from a physician, one particular physician to another particular physician. So, many a times we have seen that there are papers which have shown that in the same lab, different physicians have got different embryo transfer results. So, as I said, the result of ET depends on embryo selection, choice of media, amount of media used during loading, which is again, the embryologist's job, and how much pressure is required on the plunger, which depends on the skills and experience of the embryologist. Again, the time interval between loading and transfer. If it exceeds more than 2 minutes or 120 seconds, the whole process has to complete within two minutes. Loading to transfer. If it is more than 2 minutes, it indicates a poor prognosis. The duration of ET is again a topic in itself. It is said that if it between 1 to 2 minutes is a good pregnancy rate, but again, some studies have shown that even if you go up to 7.5 minutes, then they have not shown any adverse effects. But in by common sense and in my understanding, lesser the exposure, the smoother the transfer, the quicker the transfer, the better the results. So if you come to the consensus points for embryo transfer and there's some non-consensus points, soft is better than firm. Ultrasound guidance is important. Location of the embryo again is important, where you're depositing upper third of uterine cavity or between 1 to 1.5 centimeters. So again, it is said that anything between 1 to 1 centimeter, 5 centimeter from the fundus offers a better implantation rate. If there is blood present at the tip of the catheter, it might indicate a negative outcome. A gentle insertion is recommended. So you have to be very gentle while inserting as well as while withdrawing. Where there is no consensus, trial transfer again is something which is not recommended anymore. Cleaning the cervix with cotton swab, flushing with media or saline or both, these are not recommended, or they have got no, proofs of a significant improvement. How quickly you withdraw the catheter? Immediately, or you wait for 5 to 10 seconds, or you wait for 30 seconds versus 1 minute. So it is said that if you are withdrawing the catheter after 30 seconds, it is as good as, withdrawing it after immediately or 5 seconds. But if you wait for 1 minute, it is not a good idea. It decreases the implantation rates. Loading volume again, with or without air bubbles, there is no consensus. Ultrasound guidance is definitely very important. It reduces the procedure time. It gives you confidence, and confirming it confirms the position of the tip of the ET catheter within the uterine cavity, the site of embryo deposition, the increasing the frequency of easy ETs, and avoiding endometrial indentation. And let's not forget the patient sees a huge degree of comfort in visualizing the final step of embryo, going in the uterus and depositing itself. So it gives patients a psychological edge versus not using the ultrasound machine. Uh, Difficult transfers, again, which are time consuming, require multiple attempts, use of different catheters, use of a tenaculum, or it can cause cramping and discomfort. So for difficult transfers, it is said that to avoid difficult transfers, you can use echogenic catheters, which have shown to reduce the incidence of difficult transfers to almost 10%. So, if you are anticipating difficult transfers, please use echogenic catheters. Embryo injection speed again, we are doing a small survey on this about the injection speeds. It is said that very fast injection speeds of more than 1 meter per second can cause developmental delay, and it is recommended that the embryo should be ejected out at the lowest injection speed possible. So in the end, I would like to conclude that easy atraumatic transfer without mucus and without blood by using trial transfer, ultrasound and soft catheter work out much better. The right place to place the embryos is 1.5 centimeter from the uterus. We should try to minimize the embryonic stress by reducing transfer time and controlling time, temperature, and pH. Negotiation of a stenotic cervix with a malleable stylet is recommended. Minimizing of contractions by avoiding trauma to the cervix and fundus. So you have to be very gentle while inserting and while withdrawing. And overall, the ease of it is strongly correlated with the pregnancy outcomes. So each clinic should assess all contributing factors and determine its own protocol for embryo transfer, as well as it should review it regularly, and there should be a constant audit about the embryo transfer results, considering the embryo quality also in mind. Thank you so much. Thank you. I'm open to questions now.
Thank you, Dr. Salapreet. You have really touched upon the things which we so commonly don't even think about. I mean, and they're also important. May I request Dr. Shikha to please ask the questions from the chat box? Dr. Shikha? Dr. Shikha, you with us?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. So thank you, Dr. Sarabpri, sir. So it was a wonderful talk. We have one question from Dr. Yukti. Some patients ask for ET under anesthesia. How does it affect success rates?
So actually, I think if the patient is apprehensive, giving anesthesia is going to improve the success rates, because the manipulations will be easier. And at times, if you're anticipating a difficult transfer and the patient is not cooperating, sometimes it might be a case of vaginismus also. So these sort of patients, uh, giving a short GA is recommended. So you have to
Okay.
take a proper history and then act accordingly.
Okay. So there is one more question. Any role of atosiban before transfer in the results?
So literature says that atosiban has got no role, but some clinicians do use atosiban. So I'm not a clinician, I'm an embryologist. So I'll request Dr. Manjusha and Dr. Parul to please comment on that, because literature says it has got no role, atosiban, but yes, it is being used. Not that commonly, but yes, it is being used at some centers. I've heard about it. So I'll take the opinion
Sir,
of Dr.
I
Parul.
think you a kid on the block, and we have to wait for whether it's really useful. And yes, many of us are using it, although the literature is not really saying for or against it. But that is the case with so many agents which we use without any scientific evidence and our personal experiences. So all that we have as of now is this, and I'm sure in times to come we'll have more studies to for or against this. Um,
Yeah, and somebody I was talking to a consultant from Dubai, so they said they are regularly using
Okay.
and so just to uterine reduce the uterine contractions. So I'm not sure how frequently it is being used, but Dr. Parul will agree with that. It is not a good. I mean, as in
Yeah,
it is not
yeah,
being used on a routine basis, and there is no
yeah,
literature
yeah.
supporting it.
I haven't used it. I'm using a progesterone more as compared to this new drug.
there's one more question, Dr. Shikha.
Yeah, yes, ma'am. So there is a Dr. Nidhi has asked, is the air bubble dot visible on ultrasound as a white dot accurate for localization of embryos as well? Sometimes post an embryo transfer, the echogenic dot is not visible. Is that not a good prognosis? Should we worry if dot is not visible as marker?
So Nidhi, it's a good question. Number one, the air bubble is representing only the air bubble. It's not representing the embryo. So whether you are able to if you are able to localize it, so if you've got two air bubbles, one goes first, then the embryo goes, and then the air bubble again, the second air bubble goes. So you are sure that you have deposited the embryo correctly. And once it is said that the embryos they attach to the air bubble. So the movement of air bubble might or might not indicate the movement of embryos. The embryos might be attached to the air bubble and move along with the air bubble, or they might not be attached to the air bubble. So it's very difficult. You really have to tag the embryo, and then you can have some information about its movement in the uterine cavity, because uterine cavity is it's like a sandwich. So once you deposit the embryo, it's very difficult for the embryo to move in a sandwich-like cavity. In the endometrial cavity is like a sandwich. Uh, so I don't think that air bubble position is that important. But yes, if you don't visualize the air bubble, I don't think it's a point to worry, because it's not going worrying doesn't help anything. At the same time, yes, you do think that why you have not been able to see the air bubble. If you see the air bubble, it's more reassuring. If you don't see the air bubble, then it's a gray area. So I will not say that you should worry, but again, if you see the air bubble, it gives you more confidence, I'll say.
Sir, I have a query, small query. So to visualize two air bubbles, we should have two echogenic points, like to be sure that the embryo has also gone and it's not just the distal air bubble which is gone.
It actually, if you push gently, then you
Oh.
can see the two air bubbles going in. You see and it's a very nice feeling, when you see those two air bubbles going in.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. And there's one more question. Do we have to withdraw the outer catheter to cervical canal before injecting the embryo?
No, you don't have to do that. Why will you do that? The inner will also come, it will also recede if you withdraw the outer. The inner will also get withdrawn because it's a unit now. It's a unit now. But at times, if you're unable to negotiate if you're not unable to reach the os because it's a little stenosed, you just withdraw the outer and push in the inner. So inner being, smaller in caliber, inner might go in, whereas the outer bulb might not be able to go in. Inner might go in, and then you push them together. And so that's a way of, negotiating difficult stenotic canals.
Thank you, sir. It was a wonderful session.
Thank you, Dr. Shikhar. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sadapreet, and a big thank you that despite your travel plans and being so occupied, you took out the time to be with us. Thank you so much. And
Thank you,
I
ma'am.
really enjoyed the very, very healthy discussions and participation from the audience. It's really very encouraging for all of us here. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Dr. Parul, can we
Yeah.
now have this?
Quiz, okay. Shivam? Yeah. So I will share the rules. First, those who haven't downloaded the app, Kahoot app, they can download. That is a www.kahoot.it. And for the smoother quiz experience, we recommend joining the two devices. Please use your phone number as your nickname when joining the quiz. The Kahoot pin will be displayed on the screen during the Zoom meeting. This is a pin 591277. You will have 20 seconds to answer each question. At the end of the quiz, top 3 winners will be announced. So, you're joining.
I want to add one more thing.
Yeah.
That here the speed as well as accuracy matters. So
Yeah, to score higher, you remember that both accuracy and speed is important. I think one of the candidate has joined with a name. RUDS, yeah. Okay.
please join fast, because once we lock the Kahoot room, we'll not be able to allow more entries.
I think 11 have joined, 11, 12, yeah.
We have about 55 people with us.
Hmm.
I think
I
many.
think 2 has joined by the name. Please change it to your mobile number.
Rudri, please.
Rudri and Sangeeta. Sangeeta, yeah. Fifteen have joined.
If anybody has any difficulty joining, please feel free to write your concerns in the chat box. Maybe we can try to help.
RUDSS. You have to join. Please change your this to mobile number. Yeah. Govind, please change to go mobile. Yeah. They're still joining. Sangeeta, please change. Okay. Sangeeta, please change your mobile number.
Neha, what is the difficulty you're facing, beta?
I'm not able to join.
Do you have Kahoot with you? You can try with some other device and put in the number on the pin showed on the screen. It is 591277. Maybe
Still joining. Pooja, please change to your mobile number. Okay. Can we start? I mean, is there more? Is there anyone yet to join?
Neha, have you been able to join, beta?
Yes, she has joined.
Yeah. And who is AZ? Please change it to your mobile number there.
Hmm.
We have 20 people, Parul.
Okay,
25, ma'am.
25.
Yeah.
Okay,
So should I lock the quiz?
I think so.
If any of you is having any concerns, please feel free to post in the chat box.
They are
If we
still
don't
joining,
get,
Shivam?
Ma'am, 25 is there.
we can wait another 30 seconds, and if there are no
Yeah.
more joinees, we'll lock the room.
Yeah.
No worries.
And Parul has already told you all that at the end of the quiz, we would like to have the names and the emails of the top 3 winners, because we'll be awarding certificates to them. Top 3, right, Parul? We are giving to top 3 people.
Top 2, I think. Top 2.
Certificates for 2 or for 3?
I think certificate for 3 and a special gift is for first 2.
Okay, so let's have 3 people
Okay.
give us the email addresses.
Okay, first 3 email address and their phone number and names.
Niharika Sharma is asking if she's in. Can somebody check? Niharika Sharma? Shivam, can you please check Niharika Sharma? 9868151232. And Lucky also wants
Wait
to
a
know
minute. 98.
68 15 1232.
I don't think so.
Niharika, if you would be in, you would be able to see your number on the screen. And Dr. Lucky is also not sure if he or she is in. Shivam, can you please check if Niharika is in and if Lucky is in?
Ma'am, I can show here only.
9868, there is no one.
There is no number 9868.
Niharika, would you please try logging out and logging in again? We'll wait for you another 30 seconds. And Lucky, you also please do the same.
You have to use this PIN number 591277. Yeah, Niharika, I think, has joined. She's saying okay.
Should. When people are leaving, should we start? 22 left.
In the group. Okay, we can log the room and start. Yeah.
So let's start. This is on embryology and QCQA. So first is, what is the concentration of commercially available Hylase solution? 40 international unit per ml, 20, 80 or 100.
Please don't write the answer in the chat box.
Yeah, okay, it's 80. Fine. So next question. Which cell organelle is the most susceptible to changes in temperature? Centrosome, mitochondria, meiotic spindle, endoplasmic reticulum. Meiotic spindle, fine. Correct. So, what is the ideal temperature for human IVF culture in an IVF lab? 35 to 36 degrees Celsius, 36 to 36.7, 36.7 to 37, and 37 to 37.6. Yeah, correct answer. 36.7 to 37. Fine. So next question. Daily QC check is recommended for all the following except incubator carbon dioxide, temperature of heating block, laminar flow pressure, temperature of operation theater. Yeah, temperature of operation theater. We do not check QC every day. So the following articles are mouse embryo tested except culture media, culture dish, embryo transfer catheter or lab clothing. Yeah, most of them answer correct. In ICSI, denudation should be performed immediately after oocyte collection, 1 to 2 hours, 2 to 3 hours after oocyte collection, or 3 to 4 hours after oocyte collection. Yeah, this is correct answer, immediately after oocyte collection. The pressure gradient in descending order in IVF lab should be as follows. Operation theater, then lab, then outside. Outside, lab or operation theater. Lab, operation theater, then outside. Operation theater, outside, and lab. Yeah, correct. It should be more than lab and then operation theater, then outside. So what is the recommended speed and time of centrifugation to confirm azoospermia? 500 RPM for 15 minutes, 3000 G for 15 minutes, 2500 RPM for 25 minutes, 2500 G for 15 minutes. Yeah, 3000 G for 15 minutes. So identify the picture. This, yeah. Fertilized embryo, mature oocyte, immature oocyte, or a polar body. Yeah, this is a mature oocyte as we are seeing the polar body in this. So identify this picture. This is a Golgi apparatus, centriole, axoneme, or mitochondrial sheath. This is picture of a sperm. This is mitochondrial sheath, right? Correct answer. Osmolarity of culture media used in IVF is 189 to 210 milliosmoles per liter, 255 to 295, 300 to 350, 150 to 180. Yes, correct answer 255 to 295. So level of carbon dioxide required to maintain a pH of 7.2 to 7.3 in culture media in carbon dioxide incubator is 4% carbon dioxide, 5%, 6%, or 7%. Yeah, this is 6% carbon dioxide. The number of progressively motile sperm used for insemination in IVF ranging from 0.1 into 10 raised to the power 6 per ml, 0.2 in million per 10 raised to the power 6 per ml, 0.1 to 0.5 or 0.5 to 1. It's 0.1 to 0.5 million per ml. Right. So how should pH levels of bicarbonate culture media be maintained? By diluting with the distilled water, adjusting the air humidity in the lab, regulating the carbon dioxide levels in incubators, adding cryoprotectants. Fine, regulating carbon dioxide levels in incubators. Most of them answer correctly. So which of these is a critical factor for successful vitrification? Achieving ultra-rapid cooling to avoid ice crystal formation, freezing embryos very slowly over several hours, keeping embryos in incubator after vitrification, using low concentration cryoprotectants. Correct answer, achieving ultra-rapid cooling to avoid ice crystal formation. So optimal temperature for storing cryopreserved sperm, minus 196 degrees Celsius, minus 273 degrees Celsius, 0 degrees Celsius, or minus 80 degrees Celsius. Fine. Almost everyone has answered correctly. The ectosome occupies what percentage of sperm head? More than 80%, 40 to 70%, 20 to 40%, or less than 5%? Forty to 70% is the correct answer. So 2021 WHO criteria of normal semen analysis, sperm count more than 40 million per ml, total motility more than 40%, normal forms more than 4%. This is Then second is sperm count more than 16 million per ml, total motility more than 42%, normal forms more than 4%. Third is sperm count more than 20, total motility more than 50, or normal forms more than 4%. Yeah, this is the correct answer. Fine. Blastocyst grading take into consideration all except number of blastocysts, inner cell mass, blastocyst cavity size, or trophectoderm cells. Number of blastocysts, fine. The last question, what would be the correct order of following events during fertilization? So one is dilation of zona pellucida by acrosomal enzymes. Second is sperm bypasses corona radiata. Third is cortical granules release enzymes. And fourth is a sperm binding with vitelline membrane. Okay, this is the correct order. Thank you. Fine. So congratulations. So can you please share your mobile number, name, and email ID in a chat box?
Very interesting questions, Parul.
Thank you, Dr. Manju.
Practical, neither too easy nor too difficult. Very
Yeah.
practical.
Thank
Really
you.
enjoyed. Really enjoyed.
So
By the time they are writing the emails, the next episode would be on the third Thursday of March, and the topics would be PCOS and endocrinology. So gear up all. And one more thing, some of you were having trouble logging into Kahoot. So I would request you all to try out the Kahoot app in your free time so that we don't have these hiccups in our next episode. Yeah.
only one has, I think one has shared the mobile number. Third position.
बच्चों लिख दो पूजा. Are you noting, Parul?
Pooja Vastia, this is, I know. And first and second position.
I have taken a screenshot. Let me retrieve that. Let me retrieve the screenshot.
Dr. TSV Parvati Devi. No idea. And first position. Please write who is the on. I think she's first position. Please share your mobile number and mail ID and name.
Parul ma'am, I have shared you the screenshot in which all numbers are there.
But they are only numbers. We don't have a mail ID and name. फर्स्ट पोजीशन है ना जिसका ये 960060.
संगीता, इसमें अपना प्लीज फोन नंबर भी लिख दो एक मैसेज में.
आ गया संगीता? हाँ.
संगीता का
फोन नंबर.
नहीं, संगीता ने मेल लिखा है. संगीता प्लीज एक मैसेज कंप्लीट लिख दो, उसमें फर्स्ट पोजीशन एंड नेम एंड फोन नंबर लिख दो, या हमको पर्सनल पे अभी भेज दो तो ज्यादा अच्छा है.
भेज दिया उसने.
आ गया?
हाँ.
ओके.
फाइन फाइन.
Thank you so much. Thank you
Thank you.
for doing this wonderful quiz. Thank you, Dr. Sarapreet. Thank you, Dr. Nidhi. And thank you, the audience. And thank you, the quizzers. It has really been lovely being with you all this evening. See you all on 20th of March, same time, third Thursday of the month. Thank you.
Oh,
Bye-bye.
thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Bye.